What's up, Sam?
Yo, what's up? Hey, I can't see you for some reason.
Oh, it's because you're on your mobile, I think. That happened to me when I was on
Uh,
my phone.
is there anything I have to do?
I was trying to, I couldn't get it to work when I was on my phone. I'm not really sure. Jeff, do
All
you have
right,
any
let me see.
idea?
I don't have an idea, but um, we see you. We see both of you.
All
Mm-hmm.
right, that's good, man. I'll just keep it there. Oh my God. All right, hang on. I tried to make it happen on my. Hang on, I'll try to get on my
Yeah,
computer,
yeah, yeah.
and then you'll be able to see me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Hey,
can see
everybody.
you.
Anyway,
It's just you can't see, you just can't see
yeah, but
my
I will see you all.
my annoying face. I can't see it.
All right. Well, listen, man. Anyway, we're on, so let me just get going and
Mm-hmm.
make it happen. So,
Yeah.
um, the crazy
You in
trip. I
an
just
airport
rolled
still.
in. We were late getting out of Bogota because crazy story. Some guy had lost his passport between checking in and getting on the plane, and he realized he didn't have his passport. So they had to get him off, and then they had to get all his bags off, and it was really crazy. That was terrible
That
for him. You know,
sucks.
it's like really terrible. But in any case,
So,
but I'm here.
but only he had to get off, or everyone had to get off, you said?
No, no,
They
no.
had
We
to,
just were late getting out. Yeah, just late
right,
getting out.
yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Is so Laurie's with you too?
no, no, I'm by myself.
Got it.
Lori's up and
Okay.
doing some lectures up in upstate New York. Hey, so,
Right.
um, y- we can. I'm happy. We can. We'll just see how this goes. I mean, right now, I don't know which microphone you're using. I don't know if my voice sounds okay.
Your
You
voice
didn't have a
sounds
chance to.
totally cool.
Okay, all right, man. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, crazy trip. Great trip, really good trip. And it's just nice to get down there and have some, just this experience of Bogota, man, the city of about 8 or 10 million people, and and the experience of Venezuelans that are just all over the city. There's about 600,000 Venezuelans, and they're actually what's interesting is that there's a because Colombia and Venezuela are so similar, there
Mm-hmm.
is a way in which the assimilation process has been really pretty seamless in an odd way. Like, Colombians don't feel resentful. A lot of the Venezuelans are poor, but a lot
Mm-hmm.
of them are only poor because of being Venezuelans, and their economy has just been trashed for so long, and all
Mm-hmm.
the embargoes and so on. So, but a lot of folks are fairly highly educated, and they just had to get out. But nonetheless, it's a lot of people and so many people. Everyone's just trying to make a buck. I mean, you just can't imagine. Go down to the center square, and there's just so more Venezuelan flags than Colombian flags. Just so, which is
Really?
crazy in itself. Yeah, yeah, it's just really crazy because Venezuelans, they're just sort of making themselves known and really appealing to the good-heartedness of Colombians, right? And people will
Mm-hmm.
have, like, a little piece of cloth laid out on the sidewalk, and they're selling uh, you know 5 baseball caps, you know that are
Wow.
like, that kind of thing. I mean, just anything to just make some money to eat for the
Yeah.
day. It's just
Jeez.
it's so it's just being just sort of the experience of it in its own way is, if I stop to allow myself to truly feel what I feel when I see that, um, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's traumatizing,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
What?
I think I could say that it's traumatizing.
Yeah. Yeah. There was you said a few things. You mentioned the embargo, you mentioned the similarities. that Colombians and Venezuelans have with one another. And then you mentioned just the
Hmm.
fact that there's so many Venezuelans in Colombia. Um, what are the similarities between Venezuelans and Colombians that you're seing, and
I
what's the
think,
reason that there's so many there?
yeah, I think the two countries have a very similar history. When you a similar history, in terms of the uh, post-colonial history, certainly pre-colonial history. I mean, because it's land, it's before the co- the Spain arrived and started dividing up the land.
Mm-hmm.
But similar history, the indigenous peoples are very similar. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but in terms of post-colonial history, it's fairly similar. The church, uh, it's kind of interesting when I was in graduate school, because I was a Latin American studies major, and I never
Mm-hmm.
realized how this would come in handy, but I took a class that focused on Venezuela and Colombia, and politics in the church, right? And so it was really you really kind of see the ways in which things are have very similar history, and how that matters today. That that the ways in which people engage, and
So, Um, it's interesting. So it's I'm hearing like Colombia and Venezuela like are often like kind of paired together. Like Venezuela and Colombian history. Like you had a class that was about those two. And I don't know if that's I'm not sure if that's correct. And then also um I had another question. Um so you're saying that they unite, they feel similar based off of those histories? Like they
yeah, I
feel
think
like a sense of
you know,
togetherness, or like what's
yeah,
explicit about that, about
well,
them feeling close?
uh, yeah,
Or is
that's
it
actually a
like, oh,
really
we
good
had the same
question.
they're like, oh, we had the same histories and they feel that unite because of it, or is there something else that's
No, I think, look, there's like a culture. It's sort of like, when you live up on the border with Canada, yeah, or you live on the southern border with Mexico. And, I remember last spring when Lori and I were down on the southern border, and we were just sort of crossing back and forth. And you just you don't even feel like you're in Mexico or in the US. I mean, you sort of just, the movement is very fluid,
mm,
because of the sort of the presence of people of Mexican ancestry on the US side of the border. The
mm,
architecture is very similar, the food is very similar, so many things, right? And you just, it's a feel, like it's a feeling that's in the air.
mm,
Or in the
mm,
northern border with Canada, when you go up into upstate New York or Vermont or New Hampshire, you kind of cross over into Canada, or as I did quite a number of times up in Maine, you just,
mm,
sort of walk over the border, and that's it. The feeling's very similar. The accent, the way people speak is very similar, and
mm,
people have a kind of a very similar way of feeling themselves through their lives, I guess I could say.
mm,
And I think that's very true with Colombia and Venezuela. The people have there's just the music, the culture, the food, everything is very uh, yeah, connected.
uh,
So in any
yeah,
case, it's a very it's a very unique experience where you could have so many immigrants arriving into a land and not have a pretty incredible amount of pushback. You Um,
uh,
yeah,
and pushback from um
from Colombians who
Colombians.
themselves are not, Colombia is not a wealthy country. I mean, it's not by standards in parts of the world, it's not a poor country, but it's not a wealthy country. And so, they're the social safety net in Colombia is, it's there, barely there. I mean, it's there to support Colombians, like their social security system, their healthcare system. But when you retire, uh, and I have, a friend of mine in Colombia is retiring, and his Social Security will be about $300 a month, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe 350, and
Wow.
that's not a lot of money. And even
Yeah.
by Colombia standards, right? I mean, obviously, a dollar goes a lot further there, but it's not. Um, but it is not a lot of money. And so,
Right.
you know, so now imagine, you're in this country and you got, millions of Venezuelans showing up, and you got to do something. You have to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't have people just sleeping on the streets. I mean, you can't do that. I mean, somehow you can't have people who are sick on the streets. It's just that it's not a way to build a society, right?
Right.
So now you gotta take away from a social support network, an economic network, again, that you that is struggling, certainly at best, and you gotta,
Mm-hmm.
take those resources and give them out. So the fact that Venezuelans aren't foreigners in a certain kind of cultural way, I think allows that to happen more seamlessly.
Yeah. It makes me wonder if there's other like South American countries that have a relationship that's like more hostile that you'd be able to maybe not necessarily compare to, but it's like, oh, this is like things could look like this. I'm not sure. It was just a thought.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I don't think Chile and Brazil would get on too well. Would have such an easy time. They're very different cultures. Uh, I think that Colombia, and Ecuador. I mean, Peru and Ecuador are fairly similar, um, but it's Argentina and Bolivia, right? Paraguay and Peru would be very different cultures. So
mm,
Panama and El Salvador, this kind of thing. So, there's a lot. Yeah.
yeah. Wh
Anyway, it was cool. It was
yeah.
good. It was good to talk to people, um, to talk to a lot of folks, a lot of both Venezuelans and Colombians about, how the situation is, and how it has
Mm.
evolved and changed.
How did you
It's
get these? How did you get these insights? What were you?
I
Were
think
you just
really
walking
just
out?
talking to people. Yeah, just talking to lots of folks, Like when I'm on the streets, I'm always talking to people. Well, I have a lot of friends. I mean, I have friends in Colombia, but also just constantly talking to folks. The way I met uh, Lucha and David is um, is that I was walking. I had just given
Who's
money
Lucha and
to
David?
several people. They're the ones who I had on the stream yesterday,
Ah,
and
okay.
uh, and I was walking. I had gone to get my hair cut. I have a barber down in Bogota that I go to, and I went
That's
and bought some
cool.
flowers, because I always
Mm,
have. There's a places that sell flowers, this outdoor flower market near my apartment. So I always get flowers. First thing I do, always, uh,
mm,
and got my hair cut, and I got a couple groceries, a few things to have just for my coffee in the morning, that kind of thing.
mm-hmm.
And then I give him money away, because I always have money. You just have to kind of. There are Venezuelans everywhere, I mean, people asking, needing to eat. I mean, and they're little kids, and so anyway, I
Yeah.
just sort of given some money to folks, and it's a thing, it's psychological, how everybody has their own way to manage that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, by standards, I have far more money than I need, by many
Right.
standards, but that far more money than I can spend in my lifetime in a certain sense. But in any case,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but by their standards, I mean, by my standards, I don't, but by theirs, I do. So, but anyway,
Right.
I'd given a bunch of money to different people, and so I was just sort of like, okay, I'm tapped out, like I always put money in like one of my pockets that I'm going to give away, and I didn't have any more, and that would mean I got to kind of dig into my hip pouch where I keep my passport and everything. Although I didn't have my passport with me at that moment, but it's just more
Mm-hmm.
difficult. In any case,
Right.
they David and Lucha came up, and they asked for some food, and I was like, oh, come on, man, no. And I reached in, and I just reached in my pocket, and I gave them some money, and they said, like, and Lucha, the little girl, says, like, no, we don't want money, we want food. I said, well, hang on a second, what? So then I stopped, because she had such a powerful personality. She
Yeah.
was like, she was like she's 9 or 10 years old, and I said, wait, hang on a second. I said, what's your name? And she told me. I said, okay. And then I turned to her father and I said, like, hey, she's like pretty intense, she's pretty
Uh-huh.
bold. And he said, yeah, she's really bold. I didn't even know him, you know what I mean? I'm just playing now with him, right? I mean, just enjoying the interaction, not playing with, but
Yeah.
really enjoying the interaction.
Yeah.
So then I said, okay, so wait, what do you need? And they said, well, we need milk. We need infant formula because he has an 8-month-old child back. It was with his wife. And I said, oh man, formula? So then we just started talking, and she was kind of started asking me, oye, ¿de dónde eres? ¿Qué estás haciendo aquí en Bogotá? This kind of stuff, like, well, what are you
Mm.
doing? Who are you? Like, she's
Okay.
quizzing me,
And
and I'm
she's this
like, oh my
9-year-old.
God. Yeah, yeah, yeah. She had such a cool personality. And I just went, oh my God. All right, hang on a sec, man. So then we started talking more, and I knew that I wanted to invite someone to be on the stream yesterday. So I said, okay, hang on. So I said to this David, I said, okay, listen, man, you guys gotta do something for me. And I told him I wanted to meet him Tuesday afternoon, and I said,
Hmm.
but what, tell me what you need though, really seriously. He said, no, we just need formula. We don't need money. We don't need anything. We need formula. And formula is expensive. You know, by by our standards, formula is expensive. So clearly by
Hmm.
their standards it is. So we were standing right in front of this pharmacy that sold formula. So we went inside,
Hmm.
and she picked up the big box that was, like, how much would it be? Like $100, you know? And I'm like, no, no,
Wow.
no, no, mija, man. Mija means my child, right? Me, like mi hija, my child. I'm like, mija, no, no, no. They get the small box, And then she said, okay. And and so
Bold. She is
anyway.
bold.
Yeah, yeah, she was great. And diapers, right? And I'm like, no, listen, man, I can't do everything. Like, hang on a sec. Like,
Yeah.
because so anyway, I bought the small box, but I knew at that point in time I said, we would have them on the stream, So I said, okay,
Hmm.
whatever. Anyway, it was cool. So it was just really a nice. But they
Plus,
never asked
yeah.
me for anything else. Like, they didn't ask, like, hey, can you try to throw something else in or whatever. I bought her a soda, but that was it. I mean, that's when you sort of know, like, oh shit, this is serious, right? Like, this is not. Um, they really, I know I've been around. I've been traveling to the developing world, less developed world for 40 years, and I know when somebody's really just trying to get a job done, and which was this
Mm.
case. Like, their job was to get infant formula. That was it. It wasn't like, hey, we got this gringo here, let's try to squeeze as much out of him as possible. It was just to get the formula, you know
Yeah.
um,
Right.
so,
Right.
and it's just so intense. It's
What?
so intense. It's so, like, I don't know if you had the kind of experiences I've had in really reading people. um,
I was just gonna
yeah, I
ask
mean,
you
you
what
get,
told you that. Hmm.
yeah, you just get good. You just kind of get good. I could
Yeah.
tell that they were really grateful and very, very, again, yeah, just needed to make that happen. So it was good. Um, so it was nice having them on the stream, and we,
Yeah.
raised a significant amount of money. So, including a very generous donation by one of our viewers on the stream. So,
For
yeah,
them or for
for them.
um
Yeah, for them.
wow.
So, I mean, it's more money than they could ever imagine that they could ever imagine that they would have at this stage.
Are you can you mention like how much was raised?
Uh,
Is that okay or no?
I don't. I generally don't like to.
Okay, you don't have to. I was
I
just yeah.
could. No,
No, you don't have to. I was just
no,
curious, but that's amazing.
yeah.
Wow. And so how do they get that?
Well, I gave them some money. I gave them un millón. Un millón is about $250. And
Wow.
I knew I was going to give them that because I knew at the very least we'd have that. And then
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to talk to Julie about how we'll do that. They can't get the money. They can't take it though. I can't. We can't just give it to them because where they're living, uh, if they knew, if somebody, there are people where they're living in a really, really tough part of the city.
Right.
And if people knew they had that kind of money, even when I gave them yesterday, if people knew they had that kind of money, they could easily, yeah, it would be it. It would
Wow.
be very dangerous for them. So,
Mm.
so we can't just give it to them. But the ideal is for them, for he needs to come up with a way, a sustainable way to survive, right? So if they didn't, they arrived not too long ago, and so they've got Colombians are giving out work permits to Venezuelans, which is very smart. Because when you don't give out work permits, then people aren't working. I mean, this is the thing. I mean,
Mm.
it's so
Right.
insane how many countries bring people in, allow people to come in, whether they have refugee status or temporary resident status or whatever it is, but don't allow them to work. And then,
Wow.
then they stay on the public dole.
So,
This is one of
and
the
what do they
problems
do?
around Europe, and then people don't integrate, they don't become part of the culture. So,
Right. And so, what are they left doing? What do you see?
well, I don't know. I don't know what will happen, but Julie and I will have a bunch of conversations about that. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. In
It's
terms
really
of conversations around,
well, making sure that that helping to David's he's a really smart. He goes by David, not David. Uh,
who's
but he
this?
doesn't speak any English. This is the father. And
Okay. Hmm.
but anyway, um, yeah, we'll see. Um, so it was good. It was nice. It's nice to be in a position to see that kind of thing happen to help facilitate it. I mean,
Yeah.
there are so many millions upon millions of human beings, but sometimes you just sort of touch your finger down and say like, okay, hang on, let's go. Um, but let's
I
just
can't even,
do something.
just I can't even imagine. Just it's so like how much that impacted their little family, and just like you said, there's millions and millions, but the impact that
Yeah,
that family has gotten from that is just, oh man, it's heartwarming. It's just
yeah,
if you know that they're gonna be able to make it for a little for longer. They have more.
yeah,
They can sustain themselves for longer.
yeah.
And
And
that's
hopefully
oh
you use it as kind of like the collateral or what's necessary to build more of a life. It's crazy. Like,
yeah.
the average salary in Venezuela right now is like, $8 to $10 a month, right? I mean, it's really crazy. You just can't even imagine. And it's not that things are so inexpensive, right? Uh, so,
In
uh,
Venezuela, the salary is
yeah,
$8 to $10 a month.
Venezuela. Yeah. Yeah, it's just so you can't even imagine. Yeah, you can't. You can't, I mean,
What?
like, it's just unbelievable. This
How is
world, this
that?
crazy world we're in.
Yeah. I don't even know how that can be justified. Like, I'm not sure how a government can.
Well, it's not that, it's just the economy is just in the shits. You know. But yeah, but in part it's the government. Yeah, I mean, the Maduro, it just keeps going, man. They're just gonna hold on to power as long as they can, and not and at the expense of people, right? And not negotiate with the West to try to stop the embargo, here with the U.S. and all sorts of things. So
Yeah.
it's like, dude, it's just the same thing that's going on in the Middle East, right? I mean, like, um, it, everybody claims the righteous stance and with Israel and Palestine, all the Arab states, everybody claims the righteous stance.
Which
Um,
is
but well,
the
whatever stance they have, whatever position they have, and and everybody, and in the end, the people who are in power want to stay in power, and the idea is that they have the answer, and no matter what, they're gonna stay in power, and they're gonna keep moving forward with what they have. So whether it's Netanyahu, or whether it's the leadership in Hamas or Hezbollah, or the Lebanese leadership, or the leadership of all the Arab states around, or the U.S., whatever it is. I mean, people, they have they believe that they are the ones who should be in power for whatever reason they got in power, whether it was by force in the case of Hamas or Hezbollah, and support from
Mhm.
other nations who are supplying them with weapons, or by with Netanyahu, and I don't know how that is, by making deals with the devil is how he's in power. And
Mm,
but
mhm.
people don't give that up, and so Maduro and Venezuela could just simply say, you know what, okay, this has gone too far. And Chavez, he came into power after Chavez, and Hugo Chavez was the
In
general who,
Venezuela?
yeah, in Venezuela, who had a coup and took over, and Maduro could just give up and be like, all right, guys, that's enough. Let's go. Let's be done
Right,
with this. Let's have fair and free elections, and let's just figure out what we're going to do, and let's move forward. But that's not what he's doing, and of course the people suffer, right? Well, same with you know Hamas and Hezbollah and Netanyahu, everybody. They're in the same boat. It's just like that they demand to be the ones to be in that position, and that they
right,
somehow are going to have the answers.
right.
It's
And
quite, it's really
s-
unsettling.
so what this might be, so I'm just what do they have? What's the Venezuelan who's in power in Venezuela right now?
This guy Maduro, he's a former military
Maduro.
guy, and he
Got it.
he took he was elected, so-called elected after Hugo Chavez. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the
And
elections weren't free, and there have been elections since then, but they're not you know reasonable elections by any standards.
so
So
what
by some
exactly,
people's standards, no elections are reasonable, but
yeah, what like how when an economy when a country's economy, okay, so Jeff is, I'm not sure if you can see that, Sam, but Jeff is showing a picture of Nicolas Maduro
oh
on the
yeah, no, I
screen.
can't see it. Yeah,
Yeah. I know you probably just see the background, uh, right? You just
yeah,
see
I'm just
the
watching.
blue.
No, yeah, I just see squiggly lines. I'm watching airplanes go by.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah,
the I was gonna say like how with someone that's in power that is in power of a country where their economy is just
yeah,
you know
in the
what is
shitter.
the in the shitter. I was gonna try to I was like, what's the better word, better phrase? But
Uh,
yeah, in the shitter, how far does that power go and what's he gaining? Like what's the benefit?
well,
What's
well,
his
he's gaining all the all of the power and privilege that comes with being the president,
hmm,
and it's what some people want, man. And I don't know why people want that, or I have no idea. It makes no sense to me, but because it's just not in my personality in any way.
hmm,
But yeah, he wants that. So he's living quite well. And the people surrounding him are living very, very well. The wealthy people in Caracas are, you wouldn't even know there's a problem. You wouldn't even know the economy is killing it. You can watch these videos out of Caracas and you're like, dang, all right, look at that. So it's just an immense amount of unreasonable corruption. And yeah, it's just sad. I don't know how people can justify that kind of thing,
right.
honest to God. And I don't know how, you know, well, this is like, Hezbollah and Hamas and Netanyahu. It's the same. They just were gonna they destroy everything just to just to claim their self-righteousness. They'll
Yeah.
destroy it all. And
Wow.
yeah, human beings will just do that. And you can't stop it. These are these megalomaniacs. And then all the sycophants surrounding them who support them. So,
And is it just the ability to just objectify and other? Would you say
totally.
that's
Yeah,
the
totally.
most?
Yeah, in Maduro's case, it's objectifying the capitalist imperialists, which is not difficult to do if you study the history of Latin America. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to look al norte de los gringos and see imperialist capitalists, who are anti-democratic at a fundamental level. Like you study the history and you're just like, okay, well, that's that's kind of what happened there for
Mm,
centuries, really. First with the Spanish and the Portuguese, but then later the gringos. So, and that's the
which
thing,
is
like people don't people don't if you don't if you don't understand the history, right? You don't understand, like if you don't understand the history of Cuba, you have no idea how it is that Castro came into power, and you just couldn't you can't comprehend that. But you've got to study the history, and it doesn't take a lot to study Cuba in the 40s and the 50s, right? And the level of corruption, and all that, so the deleterious deeds done by sponsors supported by the Americans and the elites in Cuba. Well, you just create the fertile ground for a new ideology, right? Communism. There was a guy in the State Department back in the 50s who said, he was an American. I mean, uh, communism breeds on discontent, and discontent
mm,
is the historical backdrop of Latin America. I'll never forget
mm,
that. Like, yeah, there it
mm,
is. You create that. So
mm,
we
mhm.
created the
And then
conditions of Chavez.
wow, it's bringing me to like think about when my psych textbook and just like eventually when a minority becomes the majority and like social contagion and after a
Uh-huh.
while like it only takes so much for groups to just get bigger and bigger after time and like I
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
group
yeah.
of like an ideology
Yeah.
um
And for that minority that used to have a real progressive ideology to suddenly have a reactionary neo-fascist ideology, right? So it's crazy, to see how quickly the downtrodden and the oppressed become the oppressors. And yes, shit, that stuff sends me over the edge. That sends me over the
mm,
edge. And of course, look right
mm,
now. Look at all these all the I'm watching some of this stuff out of the Trump camp. Uh,
mhm,
not I don't mean to go after Trump and now go after
mhm,
uh what and not say I don't have to say something on the other side. Let me just say something about Trump. I'm watching all
yeah,
these people
yeah,
and develop these neo-fascist ideas, man, about like if they come into power, they're gonna set the record straight, man. They're just gonna come down hard on all these people that they don't like. I'm like, there's nothing democratic about anything that they're saying. It's like, oh my God, it's like it's neo-fascist, It's like,
what are
I
some
thought you were supporting. I thought, I look at them and I think, well, hang on a second. I thought you people were saying like that the Democrats have destroyed our democracy, right? So what
yeah,
you're saying is, yeah, Democrats destroyed democracy. So what we're going to do is we're going to completely take it away, right? We're
mhm,
going to, we're,
mhm.
oh my God, it's just
Oh,
crazy. Like, who are you people, man?
are you talking
So,
about were you watching the debate yesterday?
nah, no, I didn't see the debate. Thankfully, and not
Okay.
thankfully, in my apartment down in Columbia, we used to have like part of outside our kind of the back window. We have a little balcony in this back window, and we used to have like kind of an open view to the park and an open view to this satellite tower up in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And but then they built a couple buildings there, and that means, the signal can't get through as easily. And so I had
Mm-hmm.
really weak signal in my place, and so I
Right.
wasn't able to really use my phone in the way that I would need to use my phone or anything like that. So,
Got
but
you.
which
So
is
you were,
kind of good actually. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, no, I saw you speaking about it like that. You're like, I just got to
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's kind of
disconnect
nice.
for
Just
a
give me
second.
away. Wait, I want to go back to
Right.
wallflowers. So anyway, like,
Uh-huh.
uh, what's the example? Wait, is this, am I being asked to give an example of communism breeds and the historical backdrop of South America? Uh, oh yeah, yeah. Trump and his supporters are against social, right. Many people, here, this is the thing. Socialism and communists arise. So here's an example in South America. Let's look at, at Hugo Chavez, right? Or don't have to look
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. We look at whoever it is. So
Mm-hmm.
Fidel Castro. So Fidel Castro fights in the Sierra Madre, up in the mountains for, several years. And finally they overthrow the Batista regime, right? And Fidel Castro and Che Guevara and different folks, they're all about giving power to the people, really, because the Batista regime was really
And this is Cuba, you say?
yeah, Cuba was like a playland for the rich and powerful in the United States. So people would just sort of, fly over and, casinos and prostitution and God knows gambling. I mean, everything. It's just like, oh my God, it was just, that's what it was.
Wow.
So Castro then, they kick out Batista. They defeat the Americans and they're in power. So then the idea is like, oh, okay, so now you're going to do things to uphold the people. Well, they did in terms of they started universal education. They started guaranteed jobs, or all sorts of really positive things that they did. But they
Mm-hmm.
also created a really fascist regime that if you were against them in any way, you were thrown in jail. I mean, all sorts of really terrible things. Um, that you experienced, you know what I mean? Like we're gonna come down hard
Mm-hmm.
on you. So if you're not with
Mm-hmm.
us, then we're gonna, this is gonna be the end for you, kind of stuff.
Right.
And what I'm hearing, so this is not uncommon. This was the Soviet Union, right? That this is Saddam Hussein in Iraq. This is the Ayatollah Khomeini and in Iran when they kick off the Shah of Iran, which is a brutal ruthless regime. The Savak was the Iranian secret police. I mean, they were brutal, man, and they were
Mm-hmm.
supported by the United States and the Western European powers. But as soon as they finally throw out the Shah and his ruthless regime, then they come in with an even more ruthless government and oppressive system and a police state that is more ruthless than what the Shah had in power. And you don't get more ruthless than the Iranian Savak. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, when I'm seeing the language I'm hearing coming out of the Trump camp is kind of like this, it's like, wow, we hate, we don't like these Democrats, we don't like socialism, we don't like communism, and just wait till we get in power, wait and see what we do, wait and see how we punish all these people. That's the same thing that that uh that Lenin did and that Stalin did in the Soviet Union. And I'm not saying it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not they're not going to do the same things. Well, who knows? I don't know. Some of these people would, but it's this
Right.
orientation toward we're gonna attack our enemies. We're gonna condemn them. We're gonna attack our enemies, and we're gonna make sure that we set things straight. And there's so much hatred
Mm-hmm.
involved, right? You have so much
Mm-hmm.
hatred that it's just easy to do that. So Fidel Castro in
Right.
Cuba, the hate was so strong that well, we're just gonna go attack all these
Mm-hmm.
people, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Hugo Chavez, Maduro, all these people, man. So
It makes me
that's the concern right now that I'm seeing.
yeah. When you say that and you're like, um, I'm not sure if it's about a specific um uh issue, like like for example the abortion um
Mm-hmm.
debate, between both camps, and like how the Trump side is saying, well, like yesterday, the vice president of the Trump camp was saying, we're regarding abortion, like we're pro family, and so
Yeah.
they're like, we want
Okay.
to we want to allow states to have voter privileges and have a say on like
Yeah.
who what like the abortion law from state to state. And
Yeah.
then one of the vice president for, I think, Walls was saying, well, there was a lady that died because in Georgia there
Yeah.
was no abortion privileges, and so she eventually died going back and forth, having to
Mm-hmm.
travel outside of the state
Mm-hmm.
because of just because of that, instead of
Mm-hmm.
restoration of the Roe versus Wade. And so it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, it's like it sounds like to me, like relating like the neo-fascist idea like to that is like you're not allowing all
I wouldn't,
ideas to
yeah,
be okay. I
yeah, I
I
wouldn't
guess
say
just to
that.
finish.
No, you're the, I think you're on it, and yeah, you're sort of going down the right path. But see, here's the problem. If you see abortion as taking lives, then it's like, well, it's the same thing. If you see someone attacking an innocent person and they're going to kill that person, then how many how many then you would be, most people would say, well, we have to kill this person who's going to kill the innocent person, right? I mean, we have to do that. We have to stop that. Well, at any cost, doesn't really matter. Um,
Mhm,
like, okay, I mean that there's a certain sensibility. I don't see that. I don't think that. But if you did think that, then like, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I think it's what I'm seeing are things like, I see that this, the Senate or this state representative, and I don't know where it was, somewhere in one of the states, was saying like, listen, we're going to pass this law, and then if any woman travels outside a state to have any kind of abortion, not only her but everybody who's connected with her and who helped her, they're going to be thrown in prison, right? And she's going to get a life sentence. Is what this person said. I'm like, dude, I seriously, like, it just becomes, you see, it becomes out of mind. Like people just get so extremist in their views,
right.
right? Just
Mhm,
as people are extremist in their views about anti-Trump, about hating Trump, and people are just like, this guy is the worst thing since whatever. It's like, no, he's not actually. He's not the worst thing since whatever. But people lose
mhm,
their minds along the way, right? And they don't see
right.
the. And I'm not, and I'm seeing, I do, and I see very similar things. It's a little bit different because right now the Democrats are in power, and so usually the group in power, they're more capable of presenting some level of kind of a. They're less likely to wade into the most extremist ideas. Uh,
Mhm,
they'll have them, but if Trump wins again in the election, then the Democrats will wade into the most extremist ideas. So um,
mhm,
yeah, right. The UK government has begun arresting people for making unkind Facebook comments about Muslims, right? And if not, and even if it's not arresting people, because I don't know that, I can't say that. So green-eyed lady, like I don't know that that's exactly what's going on, but I know there's a lot of that thing happening. It's the threat
mm,
that is so, these crazy threats, and then you tell people, wait, hang on, you can't critique Muslims? Like, what is this, right? It's like I can't draw a picture, a depiction of Muhammad or Allah, or,
mhm,
I mean, this is, it's crazy making, man. But
mhm,
what we see in these kind of what we call communism, I don't like to call it communism because it's not. Communism is really what Jesus of Nazareth and the sort of the loving part of Christianity, what Jesus was espousing was communism, right? In the purest form of communities of people coming together and helping one another, including the poorest of the poor, right? I mean, this is the nature of what true
mhm,
communism is, and it's in its
right.
in its essence, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what these states have done, uh, what these states, um, these nations have done that call themselves communists are really not very so-called. They're not following that same ideology and practice. Yeah, maybe you could
Right.
just say that. Yeah.
What part of what part of communism are they following to call themselves communist?
Well, the
What
so-called take
aspect?
on the so-called ideology of Marxism, right? I mean, he kind of emerged from there. The whole ideology really kind of emerged out of that. But yeah, it's a really, really good question, right? Well, in Latin America, it just really emerged out of Marx. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And, which, is not, was never meant to be an ideology. Uh, Marxism was never meant to be an ideology that, something that could be taught. It's a Marxism, whatever there is nothing called that really is Marxism. Okay, like there's nothing that if you put Marx and Engels books together, all their writings together, it's like 50 volumes. Okay, there was this publishing house out of the Soviet Union, actually, when I was younger, that they published everything, and I used to buy books from them. They
Mm-hmm.
sold them from there was some bookstore in Chicago that would sell them. And I could buy, books for a couple dollars, right? But the entire set of Marx's work, Marx and Engels, right? The entire set was like 50 volumes, and I could buy it for $300. I never did because I was a poor grad student, but I always wanted to, just to have it, it was kind of cool. So,
Mm-hmm.
it was never, it's never, it's a, uh, it's a, it's a way, it's a Marx was they were writing a political philosophy as history,
Right.
and sort of it was the study of the sort of historical evolution of societies, going from hunting and gatherers all the way around, through agricultural systems and pre-industrial societies and industrial societies and post-industrial societies, and ultimately a socialist society, and then eventually a communist society would be the highest evolution. And what Marx did
Mm-hmm.
in his brilliance, right, really, because it's really about brilliance, uh, but he was a brilliant thinker, and he's a political theorist, right? He walked through how all these things would happen, and just like the
Mm-hmm.
level of insight that they brought to these analyses, man, just it's really phenomenal when you read it. That these two human beings, Marx gets all the credit, but it's Marx and Engels, that these two
Mm-hmm.
human beings could write so much, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, um, the idea is that it's a philosophy or to explain how we get to a communist society. Well, what happened in the Soviet Union was they weren't even in an industrial state. So you had to get in an industrial state. So this is, going back to the early 1900s. You have to go to like
See,
they had to develop to an industrial society. Then they got to get to a socialist society. Then they got to get to a communist society. And the Russians just said, fuck it.
was
We'll just go right to a communist society.
right.
Yeah.
Was he saying how we should get or how eventually it will happen?
How it happens. This is how it happens, right? It's a theory,
Oh, okay.
right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a theoretical, but it means, volumes and volumes of theory. But, uh,
Wow.
so when
Like
people say
that's
like Marx was wrong, kind of thing, like Marx was wrong, Marx isn't wrong. You're not right or wrong when you write polit social political theory. You're theorizing, man. And like Marx was brilliant, and and yeah, by standards, holy smokes, man. It's kind of like, so anyway. Uh, he just was it, it just people took what they wanted and they ran with it, so
mm, ah,
why did Lenin have to throw 3 or 4 million Russians in the gulags, right? Why did Pol Pot have to kill 1 million peasants in Cambodia in a matter of a year or so? Like, what? Because he was psychotic. Why did Lenin do that? Because Lenin was psychotic. Why did uh, Saddam Hussein do the same thing, right? Why did Hugo Chavez do a similar thing? Why, why, what happens? It's just, yeah, it's just insanity. So
So
people allow
yeah, so
themselves
what,
to do that.
got it. Okay. So I'm just hearing that Marx and Engels, they're writing a theory on essentially like like a course of nature in a
Yeah,
way
exactly.
of,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then people were taking from that ideology and picking and choosing what was
Yeah,
essentially communism, and then they try to apply
yeah,
half of
yeah.
like pieces of a theory that's not and without the whole
In
uh
places where
the
you shouldn't do it. Yeah, yeah,
wow
that's right.
and
That would be
when you
like
shouldn't
me
do it.
going out and like me going out and starting a Pee Wee baseball team and claiming it's the New York Mets. Actually, hang on, that's
Right.
a bad analogy because
That makes
I could
sense.
start a Pee Wee team and they could be close to being the Mets. All right, I got it. How about a different one? The Atlanta Braves. I don't know.
You could do
That's funny. Oh my God,
yeah,
I hope there are no
that is
Mets
a
fans
that's
out there. Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
funny. That's cool. That's
Yeah.
like the Super Bowl champion Chiefs, like two-time like event, like a dynasty that's being created right now, and then comparing them to like a Pee Wee football team,
Yeah,
saying
there
it's
you
like
go.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Football, basketball works better for me. I'm not too much of a baseball
Yeah.
fan.
But we yeah. But we do it. People do it. It's just it's
Hmm.
crazy. I think the thing right now that I'm seeing in the Trump camp is it's just so much bitch, so much anger. It's an anger that's kind of similar to what we saw in the Democrat camp when Trump got elected,
And are you saying just
But
from
it's just
people,
yeah, just from
or
people
like
and
citizens?
some of the lower level politicians. The upper level ones we're not seeing it so much, but some of these like state representatives and people, it's just like, oh my God, like people relax, man. But this, I
Wow.
remember when Trump got elected, and Lori and I, like the next day or 2 days later, we had a class. And,
Hmm.
so it got elected, it would have been a Tuesday, right? So it was on Thursday, and Lori came into my 119 class, and we were just like,
Hmm.
calm down, people. Like, oh my God, people, like it's okay. Like we're gonna survive. Like, oh man. Yeah, I tell you.
Right. Oh, okay. When Trump
You
got
don't have to.
elected?
Yeah, when he go back in 2000, yeah. Or
20
2020, whatever it was. 2016 it
or
was. Oh my God, that was
16,
a long time
16.
ago.
Yeah, geez.
I was a
Wow.
young
I'm like
man back then. Yeah, yeah,
that's funny.
crazy.
Wow. And so Wallflower, he just said, or they just said anger question mark. So I guess he was when you were saying you see so much anger. I guess he's like, oh, where are you seeing that? You like politicians,
Yeah.
like low level politicians, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
uh,
very much, man. A rage that's just like, whoa. Yeah. I think that, okay, you could argue that I don't take but here's the problem. I don't take into isolated cases on things, right? It's like for example, I was on the airplane today, right?
hmm.
I'm flying. Everything's very calm. Everything was super calm, except for the guy that lost his passport and got kicked off. But even that was calm. He and his wife, they
Yeah.
were both probably about my age, and they just like, oh shit. But everything was calm. It was such a calm flight. Everyone did what they were supposed to do. Um, Nobody was losing their shit over anything. Um,
Hmm.
it just and I think about, well, but I know I can get on one of these, the New York Post or one of these, tabloid type newspapers, USA
Hmm.
Today or whatever, I don't know, and I can find a story about some crazy airplane that had to turn back or somebody got arrested or whatever, right? And I'm thinking, well,
Hmm.
but at any one moment there are thousands of airplanes in the air, right? Right? And like all over the world, and nothing, this stuff isn't happening everywhere. And so
Right.
that makes me think. I tend to be very optimistic about the world and about life, and so that's what allowed Lori and I to go into that classroom in 2016 and say, relax, people, like relax. Uh, and so, but
Right.
maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm naive, uh, you know,
Hmm. Mm.
but I
No.
don't know.
But I'm not here to
Uh,
say you're naive. But
sometimes I am,
interesting.
because I think that
Yeah.
see the I don't see it through rose-colored glasses. I'm quite clear about a lot of stuff that's going on, but also I'm a sociologist and I go by the numbers, which allows me to jump on an airplane in a couple hours. I'm going to be back in another airplane, and it's safer than if I rented a car and drove back to State College.
Right.
So I'm going to go with numbers. Be like, all right. And if Trump gets reelected, we're not going to turn into a fascist state, a totalitarian state. He's not going to declare himself president for life and be president for life, kind of thing. That's not going to
Right.
happen.
Right.
So people's sensibilities will take over for most things, and we'll get through it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
at some point in time, maybe we're not going to get through it, and we have a lot of guns, and we have a lot of a lot of things could go very wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
probably for a while we're all right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. You're
probably
just
won't
speaking,
happen until climate change kicks in.
which that's a
Uh,
ways from now. Right.
well, maybe it's not so far.
Right.
It could be I mean, the collapse of systems happens very quickly now, and
Mm-hmm.
we're watching this. And you don't go by a single hurricane like what we just saw, and like what we saw now in
Right.
Tennessee and North Carolina and that kind of thing. Like, you don't go by a
Mm-hmm.
single one, but you start looking at it all over, and now down in Colombia and wherever you go, and you say like, okay, this is pretty serious, and we need to be careful about it. But
Right.
anyway, but I know we don't have to go there. So anyway, the point is, by the way, last night I did not watch the debate.
Right.
I'm sure I'll see a couple clips, but hopefully
Mm-hmm.
I won't watch the clips that are shown over and over again. I'll try to just grab the whole thing and just open it, start the video somewhere, and just see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it
Or I
was
won't.
in comparison to like the Trump versus Harris debate, it did
Yeah.
seem at least I felt like as a listener I was being more informed rather than like
Mm,
watching like too instead of just like watching combat and people making fun of each other, like calling each other names
yeah.
or like just it was way less of that, way less
Yeah.
and just more them trying to inform like an audience and like
Yeah.
debate their point, which that was
Okay,
pretty
that's cool.
cool, you know.
Yeah, that's
Um,
cool. I like hearing that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Maybe maybe that's well, that gives me hope, for something. I don't know what, but hope. Anyway, listen, man. Uh so um i- are there any does anybody are there any questions in the um yeah, so here the media fan the flames of hatred against Trump by indoctrinating viewers to believe it's anti-Trump rhetoric. I wouldn't say indoctrinating, but I would say that they definitely inflamed the hatred of Trump, which made, first off, the media created Trump, right? By just covering this guy. We can't not, it's like a, it's like a traffic accident. You can't, that you can't turn away from, like, like spilled milk. When you spill milk and on a table and you just have to sit and watch it for 10 or 15 seconds before you go like, oh shit, I got to clean this up because it's just everywhere. And I think to a great degree, Trump sort of, or the media sort of brought him into power because he just kept covering all his crazy stuff that he would say. And not
hmm
crazy stuff but stuff that he just would say that was outside the box, right? Like politicians don't speak truthfully, like, you know what I mean? Like they don't actually say what they think. Of course, Trump doesn't say well, Trump says what he thinks, but the problem is he just thinks different things on a regular basis, so he's always jumping around. But the
hmm
media helped create him, but the media also helped fan the flames of the anti-Trump stuff, and
right,
and then that helps. A lot of people, all you hear of Trump, I think it's a little bit different now because he's on the campaign trail, so you're getting more and more things. But all you hear are the crazy things, right? The outstanding stuff. Like I said, I mentioned several weeks ago, I watched that, um, I watched him playing golf with somebody, and 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 I'm just listening to just the stuff. The two of them they're riding around on a golf course, right? Brian Shambo or whatever, I guess the guy's name is.
Uh-huh.
And I was just like, oh, all right, well there you go. This guy, he's just like just talking. I'm like, oh, that's all right. It's pretty reasonable. And
Right.
but the problem is you put him up in front of an audience, and then he just it's like you pull the string and then he does something else. But it's kind of like me, right? I'm actually a fairly shy person until you put a camera in front of me, or you put me in front of a big audience, and then I'm not shy at all. So I'm very
Right,
similar in
right.
that kind of way, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's all people know of him. They just know the kind of like more the
Animated
nuttier
version or
side. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
interesting too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If the media had not covered him in the way that they did constantly, it played into his megalomaniac personality side. He actually could have been a really, really thoughtful politician, which he was in the very beginning. He was actually quite thoughtful. And
Really?
yeah, and the very beginning, I mean, when he was first starting to run, he was saying things that were like, okay, hey, we really need to hear this. Um, but then when you kind of cover everything, it plays into that side of him that's very much a narcissist, because he very much is.
Right.
Well, anybody who runs for the kind of office is a narcissistic streak, but he very much is. So they
Interesting.
helped to create that.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate because it's really
That's
unfortunate
an
that he could have been, yeah, I don't know, could have been
oh,
something other than what he was,
it's
if that makes sense.
yeah.
But,
No, it does. I was just really interested in your statement, like, oh, anyone that runs, essentially could be a narcissist. Or I think that's what you said.
yeah.
I was like,
Well,
wow.
I mean, well, you
Yeah.
sort of have to, man, to do something like that,
Yeah.
like, oh my God. Like, I see it. I mean, for me, for example, I, uh, I don't get, I don't get power from being in front of my class, let's say, right? I'm in there,
Mm-hmm.
the cameras are on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get, I'm not empowered by that. It's just what I do because I've just been doing it forever, and I do it a couple times a
Mm-hmm.
week, right? But I can
Uh,
imagine that if I were doing that every day and everywhere I went, the cameras were on, it would just develop a different side of my personality.
mm-hmm.
And I don't, I don't know what that, I don't know what that would be. I don't know what it would look like,
Right.
but I could see that could just kind of take over. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
now it doesn't really, it's just, it's just a thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. Because like I get that makes sense because you're getting more you receive if you're on stage all the time, you're getting way more feedback like constantly. There's like less time for you to reflect on yourself,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah,
Like I don't
yeah,
know, just a few things I'm thinking about versus like on stage twice a week, more time to reflect in
yeah,
between that, and
for sure, man.
it's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. It would be like, okay, hang on. Show what the narcissist overused and erroneous. Okay, Trump is yes, but be careful with throwing around personality disorders, prime stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, it's like the overuse of PTSD. Yeah, you're right. Okay, Eric, you're right. I think you're right that I'm here. I am hearing narcissistic personality. I'm hearing that a lot, way more than it needs to, than it should be used. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 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 yeah. And
Interesting.
and could you imagine feeling the camera was necessary so you could prove what was and what wasn't? Yeah, yeah. I could see that. Yeah, that having, like I could imagine that for me, I need to just in order to think anything clearly in my mind, I have to turn a camera on and sort of tell the world, right? Um, I could see how that would be the case. I think for me, because I spent, it's been 40 years of teaching, and for the vast majority of them, I don't have a camera on. I'm not thinking about any of that.
Mm,
So it's deeply embedded in me that I don't need that, or that's not part of any of this is for me. It's so deep
right.
that it's like, if you become these people that most people that win the lottery kind of late in life, um,
Mm-hmm.
not like, with those that win the Powerball kind of thing, but people that win the lottery, most people, it doesn't, like if you're my age or something, it doesn't change them very much at all, if
Right.
at all. Because, you're stuck in you've built a consciousness around a certain way of living. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but God
Um,
bless the folks
yeah.
who win a big chunk of money, man, and they're not ready for that. It's pretty tough.
Like the camera hasn't changed because I always hear that like Jordan Peterson was changed because of the fame. It's like I don't see Sam going
You know
off into
what?
like this Jordan Peterson. And I
No, I
yeah,
don't
I
think
don't have
it's
any comments on that. I just thought of him because you're like change and I
yeah.
heard that, you know.
It feels like that. Well, maybe it's just that he just wears these really funny suits now, man. These suit jackets. Like every
Yeah.
time I see him, he's wearing some like funky article of clothing, which is pretty cool
Yeah.
actually. But
Did
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. I wouldn't want that, man. Uh,
Come on, you don't want to be in a funky suit?
well, I've thought about it, but I don't think I just wouldn't want to be. I wouldn't want to have that much attention. I really don't want that much attention, and I don't want to. I wouldn't want to be in that space all the
Hmm.
time. Once in
Hmm.
a while, it's good to touch it so we kind of know what it is. But I would not want to be in that space. It's just
Hmm.
like that's too. Oof, it's head scratchingly difficult to navigate. Like I would say
Right.
that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Just to comment on his suit, suppose that he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and supposedly he has got like a suit for every chapter of his book. So like
Yeah, all right,
it's
that's cool.
supposed to mean something. Like the design
Yeah,
is
all
supposed to
right, that's
represent
cool.
something with a chapter uh in his
Yeah.
book. Yeah, it's interesting. I was like, okay.
All right.
It's
Yeah.
cool.
All right.
Uh,
Yeah, that's cool, man. My shirts mean something. When I was down in Colombia, in my closet in Colombia, I have uh, uh, a whole separate wardrobe with different shirts, that
mm,
different clothing that I realized, wow, I only wear that in Colombia. So I was thinking, I got to bring a bunch of that home and change things up a little bit.
right?
And then I realized, well, people in Colombia only see me in those clothing. So there it is. Because like this time I went down with nothing, just the clothes I was wearing, and I just threw them in my
Right.
closet. And so they see me in that, and they're like, "Dude, don't you wear anything else?" I'm like, "No, this is it.
My
That's what I
Colombian
got."
style. This is my like when I'm here in Colombia, is what I wear.
Yeah, yeah, it's the same style, just different colors.
Yeah.
I do have a
That's
Colombian
him.
Coke dealer shirt, by the way, in my closet
That's,
down there. Yeah,
that's
I
cool.
do. It's like a really cool Colombian shirt, man. You'd
Oh,
expect a
that's
Coke
dope.
dealer to wear. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's
I don't
funny.
wear it.
That's
I don't
funny.
wear it much, but when I do wear it, it's like whoa, whoa, whoa.
That's a
It's bold.
vibe.
Yeah, yeah. It's a vibe.
Like that's not Sam the Professor anymore.
No, man. It's yeah. That's really fun. All right, listen, man. Uh, and listen, I'm gonna hop off though. I feel like I should
Yeah,
hop off. I gotta plan class for tomorrow. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I don't have much time, and then I gotta think
right.
about it. So, um,
Yeah, you
so
got
why don't we
that.
just kill it? Why don't we back off here, everybody, and we'll it's been crazy. I'm just sitting here staring at my phone. I can't see
Yeah,
anything,
I
nothing on my
know.
phone except the chat coming up. But I don't know. I'm just assuming I'm in the middle of the frame and that y'all can see me, And Elijah, I'm assuming you're on there too, so that's good to
Yeah,
know.
no, I'm just I'm here. I'm here. It looks like it's you just can't read my facial expressions, but like
Okay, all right, that's good.
it's been pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah, I should
Yeah.
let the
You
chat.
can
I should just bring the chatting. You guys just run the class. Yeah, Eric, I like that. And Wallflower, thanks for transcribing. I really appreciate that. Okay, listen, everybody. So I'm gonna head out. Go get ready.
Yeah.
And
Thanks for doing this, Sam, even though you're in a different
no,
space.
it
So
feels
that's
good.
cool.
No, it's really
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, it's good. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for yeah, thanks for let's hold it down. Let's see what happens.